This is what's going to allow you to stop the guesswork and actually start the growing. And so data is going to be your best friend through a lot of this. Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories. It's Memory Makers Podcast. It's time for the show. There you go, Mike. That one was for you, baby. A little classic rock coming at you. So, and apologies to anybody who's going to take that as classic rock, but I feel like it's a retro enough song that our younger audience is not going to necessarily know what it is. So check it out and let me know if you can find out who sings "I Want to Know What Love Is," and we'll look for you in the comments. Good morning, good day, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. Excited to jump in with you guys on an episode that is all about show me the data. So we talk a lot on these podcasts episodes, whether it's with guests or operators, of data, like use this, use that. But for new startups, it can be really difficult to know, hey, as I'm just getting into this world, what are some of those key areas of data that I need to start looking at? Or if I've already started, but I don't necessarily have as much data as I would want, where and how should we look at different pieces of data that can be impactful for us? How do we actually start to track that? How do we utilize our tools and our network to find better pieces of data that can tell us a better story? So today we're going to unpack some of the most critical data that you should be tracking and how to start building some simple systems to do that. And it really just comes down to this idea of, if you're going to make informed decisions, the data that you have is going to tell you what's going on, what's working, what's not, what money is being left on the table or leaking because we're, just not aware of something that could be impacting that negatively. And it's really easy when we're in the busy day-to-day world of working in the business versus on the business that we make these kind of anecdotal or gut feel or bro science-y type of assumptions that we may be only making a partially informed decision off of, or not have our finger on the pulse of what's actually happening. So if we're going to start to then make changes to the knobs and the levers to, slowly increment or improve that, we're going to be able to successfully scale our business by using data to make predictable decisions. And so the first part of this episode, we're going to talk about where should I start if I'm new to the game? How do I work with my partners and vendors to tell them what I want to see? So that way at 30,000 feet, I have a high level understanding of where I should start to be looking for it. And as I'm talking with those partners, they can then take that and share, oh, you also want to be expanding that to look at these elements. You want to, have insights onto these types of trends based on other successful customers that they have. And ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to help you not have to reinvent the wheel, understand where we should be looking at things from a high-level trend perspective, and then utilizing our network and our partners to actually help us find better ways or of tracking certain key pieces of info. So the first of 5 kind of high-level data pieces that I would encourage folks to do is revenue and profit calculations. So starting with, based on all of the attractions that you have in your space, you want to be able to start understanding what is the total revenue that individual attraction or individual profit center is generating for you. So, hey, if I've got go-karts, mini golf, laser tag, arcade, I want to make sure that I understand what revenue on any given day or with any one person, even more specifically, is attributing money into those pots. So that way, hey, at the end of the day, we did, let's call it $50,000, and 10 of it came from laser tag, 10 of it came from mini golf, 10 of it came from go-karts, 10 of it came from food and beverage, and 10 of it came from parties. Then we can know, okay, where is this actually starting to come through? So understanding where it is by attraction, as well as your arcade and your parties and your food and beverage. As we go further into this, there are going to be some things where what the revenue is versus the profitability, your cost of goods sold versus, hey, what are the materials that we're using? What's the labor that's going into it? But we'll go down that path a little bit later on. So revenue and profit calculations for your individual attractions and profit centers is the starting point. So that way we know, hey, the majority of our revenue is actually coming from this attraction or this aspect of the business. And then we can start to get into the profitability of those as we look at, again, what are our hard costs associated. And then at a high level, we also can take, okay, if this is the revenue that we have across these 5 areas, and we start to calculate what's our cost of goods sold within those individually of, hey, I know I've got 14 cents of overhead per pack per game on laser tag based on the labor that I have associated with it. That's great. So it starts to give me that individual attractions profitability. But then when I add all of those different elements up together, I can also factor in things like what's my rent, what's my insurance, what's my other things for the true kind of net shakeout for individual areas and what their costs are versus the global costs that you have just for turning the lights on from the beginning. The second area of data that I really encourage folks to be mindful of, there are 5 of these as well. So the first one is, do you have the ability to count your daily guests? What's your daily guest visitation? Hey, we know today we had 125 guests come through the door. Today we had 400 people come through the door. Getting that daily guest count is really important. And you want to be able to track that day to day, because over time, we're also going to look at, hey, what did we do on this Tuesday last year? Versus this year, what did we do during this month last year versus this year? Like, there are some of those bigger trends that we're going to want to do. So the other piece that I really encourage folks is tracking this specifically to days and times wherever we can, because as we zoom out and we start to look at big picture trends, this is going to be really impactful. So daily guest count is the first piece around guest behavior and traffic that I always encourage folks to look at. Looking at peak times. Hey, we had 400 people come through the door today. 100 of that was from open until 2 p.m. And then 200 of that was from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then another 100 of that was from, 4 p.m. to close, whatever that looks like. We also want to be able to, in addition to the number of guests that are coming in each day, the peak times of when they're coming in on those days, is also look at what the dwell time or length of stay is for guests. This will also help you start to get some insights on, hey, if we have guests that are typically, coming in for an hour block, versus guests that are coming in for an hour and a half block, there can be a significant jump in just the per cap spending that they're giving us. And so what do we want to do to start increasing what that typical length or dwell time is, so that way we can also subsequently encourage more spending and more revenue that's coming from those guests. So daily guest counts, peak time, dwell time. The other big piece around guest behavior and traffic that I recommend is the repeat business. So how are you able to track that a person is coming in each day, and also in your database being able to then flag that as, hey, this person has come to us, we know that this person comes to us 2 to 3 times a year, or once a year, or less than once a year, because then that will start to give you some good opportunities of pushing promotional elements or redemption offers to either the lower visiting folks and being able to hit their radar, and we maybe have a special package or bundle. Hey, they only come once every year and a half, and it's typically associated with a birthday party. Okay, great. We need to figure out what are some different party attractions or things that are relevant to them of why they're coming to us. And then you can also take a look at, maybe we're not hitting something for them that they would like. Like this person only comes on our karaoke night. They're a big karaoke enthusiast. Cool. Now we can start to get in a little bit more and have some profiles around our folks. And so the last piece that I recommend around guest behavior and traffic that you look at is also the booking source. So are they walk-in traffic, or is this somebody that has made an online reservation either for a party or for a specific attraction on bowling lanes, what have you? So by knowing how many people are coming in each day, what are the peak times within those days that they're coming? How long are they here? How often are they coming back? And where did they come from? So that way we know, hey, we get a lot of our business from walk-in traffic. and very little from our booking, do we need to look at a change on how we're promoting and changing the customer behavior to encourage them to do more online bookings for things, so that way we can have better insights in predicting what our staffing is going to need to be or what have you. So those are some really good areas for you to be able to focus on for guest behavior and traffic. The third area that I encourage folks to start looking at their data is with birthday parties and group events. So what is that conversion rate from when we get an online inquiry to people that actually go to book? So if we have an insight of, hey, we get 100, we're going to use just fake numbers for easy math. If we know that we get 100 people looking at doing a party or kind of exploring those group packages that we have to offer, and 20 of those actually end up booking with us, we know we have a 20% conversion rate. And so by being able to say, okay, if we want to be able to increase that conversion rate, what are some areas that we can do? Do we need to be on their radar more with Facebook ads or Google, or do we need to be doing some old school emails or newsletters or cold calls, what have you? The other piece that is really important to take a look at around your group events is just what is that average party spend? So, hey, we know that we have 4 different party packages, and so what are, across all of those, what's our average spend when we do have a group coming in, but also being able to track which are the most popular party packages and add-ons that we have, so that way we know, hey, if we've got an entry-level party, that's a really cost-effective one, but we also know that, we want to be able to get that average per spend up. Do we need to have some different a la carte add-ons, or do we just need to eliminate that and just have 3 packages, so that way we're kind of inherently forcing a higher purchase point? Some folks get a little nervous around that, where they're saying, oh gosh, but I need to be competitive against my competition, what have you. You can't make any of those intentional decisions unless you know how popular is this really. Because emotionally we can say, oh, I don't want to take away this low-hanging fruit. I don't want people to be intimidated or not feel that they want to spend. But if they're only doing 10% of your birthday party bookings anyway, you're going to most likely capture that through some other form or mechanism when they're coming regardless. You can also combat that with what are the value and the deliverables that you're putting in with that package. So knowing if we're going to hone things in and be really intentional and do things really well, which are the things that are just, kind of too far out there, what's outside of the bell curve, and now how do we drive more to our sweet spot with that. And the last piece is, after you have that conversion rate of, hey, we know we get 20% conversion on our booking, we know that they spend an average of $400, and that's across 6 people. What is that cost per head versus the revenue that we're getting? So that profitability aspect of, hey, our average booking is this amount and it's for this size of a group. Here's what that actually costs us as far as the paper plates and the pizza and the food and the attractions versus what the profitability is. So that way you can say, hey, this low-hanging fruit party package that we offer has the least amount of profitability for us, and it's not one that people are using a lot. Now we can feel more comfortable about making changes or eliminating that and focusing on the areas that are going to be more aligned with the ideal clients that we have, in order to make those group events and party bookings more profitable. The fourth area that I have folks take a look at is around your staffing and labor costs. So 3 things that are good starting points to look at your staff and labor costs is, the first one is hours scheduled versus actual hours worked. And so, hey, if we were budgeting for, whatever it is, 100 hours worth of labor, and we over the last 3 weeks have consistently been at 125 hours of labor each week, could be a good thing because that's tied to higher traffic counts, what have you, or are we being inefficient of when and how we're asking folks to being staffed? So that hours scheduled versus actual hours worked is going to be really helpful for you, understanding what your labor ratio is to your overall piece of, hey, if all of our costs that we have over the course of this week or this month or this year are X amount of dollars, what portion of that total cost is associated with just labor? So do we want to be at a 19% labor rate of, hey, all of the hard costs that we had, 19% of it came from labor? Do we want to make sure that we're offering and comfortable with a little bit of a larger one, like 23%, because we know we're doing some extra value adds, having somebody open the door, what have you? And so the last piece then, besides the, or I'm sorry, not the last piece, but that hour scheduled versus actual hours really, really will help you understand also what that cost is and what percentage of that cost is actually versus your overall, bills. The other piece that you want to look at then is what's your revenue per labor hour. So we know, hey, the guest counts that we were talking about before and the peak times versus a low time, it will start to help you then look at how many bodies are we staffing and where and when do we need to be staffing them, what days of the week and what times, to really make sure that we have a satisfactory guest interaction, and that we're not overpaying for people that just have time to lean, time to clean, during those lesser hours. And so because being able to understand the correlation between the amount of labor that we have and what that revenue is just helps you, again, fine tune when and where you're going to be having your team members on the floor. The last piece that I encourage folks on the labor and staffing side is, what are some of those individual KPIs? Are there revenue goals, upsell goals? Whether it's folks in the back of the kitchen of, hey, what's that average time that it takes from order to food on the table? These will vary across what the different roles are within your organization, but it's still a good data point to have of what are the most successful key performance indicators that we have within each of these groups to make sure that they are working efficiently and targeted towards better performance, better guest satisfaction, all of that. The fifth area of high-level data points that I encourage folks to take a look at is marketing and promotions. So the first one within that category that I tell folks is, what is the return on investment by channel? So if we're doing email versus Facebook ads versus Google, and this ties back into where are we getting our customers from? Are they walk-ins? Are they online bookings? Are they, tracking? Or do they have a promotional piece that they're redeeming that we know is tied to a Facebook ad? Where, what are we seeing that conversion rate? And what is the return on investment? So, hey, we spent $20,000 on Google ads, but we've only had, 10% of the people actually utilize those. Like, that also helps us understand what's our customer acquisition cost and what number of people are actually using these promotions that we're putting out. So that way we can determine what is this true return on investment that we're putting out there on the marketing and promotion side. So between those areas, again, just a high-level recap is revenue and profit calculations by your attraction and your arcade, your parties, your food and beverage. What is your guest behavior and traffic with the daily guest counts, the peak time, the dwell time, the repeat business, and what source they're coming from? Looking at birthday parties and conversion, or birthday parties and group events, for how are we converting those folks? What's their average spend and what's our profitability on those group bookings? What hours are we scheduling for our staff versus hours actually worked? What's that revenue per labor hour that we have? And what are those staff performance indicators that we want to track? So that way we can also have a better understanding on the marketing and promotion side for what channels are actually netting us where are we reaching our audience? Who's actively engaging with that content? So the next part of this episode that I wanted to talk about was, how do I actually start building up this data bank? And so there's two different things. One, if you're a new operator, you're going to be working with, point of sale systems, and you're going to have reporting data from your swipe card readers. And hey, what's the relationship of my payouts versus my, average spend in the arcade? All of those kinds of things. I always tell folks, don't wait for a perfect system if you're kind of already in the weeds, but you don't do a good job of tracking data. At the very least, start putting some of these key things that are most impactful. Start small, keep it simple and consistent, and then start to build from there as you go. So if you need to start with some Google Sheets or some Excel spreadsheets, that's okay. Don't be embarrassed by that, but also understand that you're going to have more insights and better ability to see relationships between different data points through utilizing the tools or the horsepower that you may have in your point of sale And also asking other operators within your network, hey, where and how what data are you guys tracking in this area, and how are you actually capturing it, right? Because you may not have a great way of tracking a true number of the number of people that are actually coming in each day. If I'm only looking at, well, these are the number of individual transactions that we've had, doesn't necessarily give you what the guest count was for that day. And so there can be different tools and mechanisms that those vendors or other operators in your network have to say, ooh, hey, well, we actually have this really snazzy over-the-top camera tracking that IDs everybody by their face and can give us individual person counts, like a little creepy, a little Big Brother. You may not have to go that far down the road to get some of those good data points, but being able to understand how other people have gone about trying to capture really impactful data, asking questions, and building that network through your peers and through your partners is really critical. So don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel, but also you have to start somewhere. So if it needs to be small, great, but then you should be having intentional conversations with those vendors of these. I don't have insights into this type of activity. How do I start to actually do that? Really, really important. And the other thing that I tell folks beyond using the network is just because you have all of this data that you need to collect doesn't mean that you as an individual are solely responsible for that. So if you know, hey, I want to get guest counts or throughput counts or play counts on laser tag, great. Who's my attractions manager? And deferring and delegating to them of, hey, this is the data that I want to start getting some summaries on and some trends on. So I need you to, provide me with some of that information, and you can work through them of how you're going to collect that. But you shouldn't be the one kind of Sherlock Holmesing your way through all of this. Utilize your team leads and allow them to give you, the high level reporting and data. So that way, then you can look at that at a bigger picture. The other piece that I mentioned this at the top of the episode, but really important to remember that you're going to want to use this data in a variety of ways for short-term views, for big picture, long-term views and trends. And so the more specific kind of tracking that you can have around day over day, month over month, week over week. Hey, what was week 26 last year versus week 26 this year? So we know, hey, that's a summer vacation time frame. We typically see a dip over these 4 weeks, and then we see it pick back up. So again, you can have better insights on how we're going to staff. Hey, it's not going to be the same labor requirements for Christmas break as it is for when kids are going off and doing heavy, summer traveling. And so those are going to help you also predict and make decisions on, hey, we're not going to overstaff and jump the gun because we know this typically dips, over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to scale back number of hours scheduled so that way we're not out of balance with the needs of the business. The other piece that I recommend that folks typically do is you need to have a recurring time to review this data that you're getting from your team leads that you've empowered them to track and provide to you. So that way, then you as a business owner and high-level operator can start to look at what are those big trends. Hey, this is a dip. What's actually feeding into that number? Is that because, are we getting some additional surveys? Are we seeing that somebody else has just opened up? Is this a typical low period? Is it an occurrence or a trend, right? So we want to be able to look at that data and start to see what it's actually telling us beyond just the spreadsheet. And if you really take a look at this as well, this is what's going to allow you to stop the guesswork and actually start the growing. And so data is going to be your best friend through a lot of this. So as I said, stay small or start small, stay consistent, and those insights will come as you're looking at those areas. So with that, that's a good spot for us to wrap up. We've got more awesome content coming your guys' way through the weekly episodes, so be sure to come back and check out the new insights that we'll have from operators and partners across the industry. If you liked what you heard today, we would love to get a 5-star review, please and thank you. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, please shoot us a message on social media and we'll get that folded into the mix for you. And big shout out as always to Mikey Mike on the ones and twos working the Ultranet for us. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one, Troublemakers.